All right, sweet. What is up, everyone? It is Nemo, and I'm here with Bella. She's off camera right now. My window's open, so if you can hear anything, that's why. But before we get into it, I just wanted to introduce myself and say that today we are going over the second GOP debate from last night. I was working, so I couldn't react live to it, but we're here, and we're going to have some fun. All right? So let's get this started.
Our nation's history, Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, the great communicator.
I have not seen
America's
anything.
40th commander-in-chief. He railed against big government.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And sought peace through strength.
Yeah, so
Mr.
I'm
Gorbachev,
coming into this from a hate watch
tear
perspective,
down this
so
wall.
that's my entire
40 years after Reagan's
just to
landslide
debunk
reelection,
their garbage
the
points.
Republican Party
None of
faces
this
critical
matters
questions.
anyway. The whole point of this is
What
to
does
just
it mean
show
to
that
be a
Donald Trump is
conservative?
We fight for the truth.
We are not going to
in a
worry
GOP
about
time.
what the left
It's
and the
just general
media
election
say about us.
What is the key
Like,
to a
these
thriving economy?
jabronis.
It's innovation, not regulation.
America could do for anyone what she's done for me.
We will.
One sec. Sorry, got the Hillary Clinton jump scare. I just need to get Bella's balls. Hey, you want to say hi? Say hey. Hey. Good girl. All right, we got ads on this too.
When we have a conversation about the things that are happening on this stage, we think about the fact that Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that because last debate he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know,
Oh, cringe. Are you serious? All right, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. So Fox
High
is
in the
pushing
hills of California is America's role in the world.
We need to build a military
Zelensky,
fitted
they
to the
talk about
widening
Ukraine.
challenges
I'm
in an ever more dangerous world.
sometimes to
Vivek's
avoid
coming out
war
strong against
by
Ukraine.
showing tough.
And the country faces even more challenges. Would Reagan even recognize the country in which we now live? Tonight, candidates seeking the Republican nomination converge in California to chart a new path for the grand old party. Now is the time for choosing.
Got this in Reagan's mausoleum. This works held. I like how it's a movie. That's fine.
Welcome to the second Republican debate of the 2024 primaries, live from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. We're inside the spectacular Air Force One pavilion, where the stage is set for a showdown.
Whoa.
I'm Stuart Varney of Fox Business, and I am thrilled
Stu
to be
Varney?
sitting
All
alongside
right,
my
let's get this
co-moderators,
going.
Fox News Channel Dana Perino and Ilya Calderon,
Ilya Calderon.
Univision.
Good evening.
I'm surprised
Thank
he
you,
didn't
thank you,
melt.
Stuart. President Reagan famously
When he
described
pronounced
America as a shining city on a hill. And tonight, 7 candidates will make the case they should be the one to lead that city
I
into a
hope they bring
brighter
up Bob
tomorrow.
Menendez.
But first, they have to
I
convince
hope they don't
you,
mention
the voter.
Trump's criminal
Please
cases
allow me to welcome
whatsoever,
our
and they just
Spanish-speaking
bring it to
audience.
Bob Menendez.
Muy buenas noches a
Just
todos.
like how
Desde la
corrupt is he,
Biblioteca
and then they all
Presidencial
defend
Ronald Reagan,
like,
los precandidatos republicanos también buscan su voto para las primarias del partido.
of
Bienvenidos.
Egypt should be able to
And
get
good evening. So let's meet the
talking
candidates who have qualified
I can't
and
wait. I'm so
chosen
excited
to be
for
on this
this.
stage tonight.
None of it matters.
They are
This is just
positioned by
like
the order they
them
rank in the
so
polls,
desperate
with the highest polling
for any
candidate
type
in the
of
middle.
public
Standing
attention
center
that
stage,
they're
Florida
now
Governor
just,
Ron
like,
DeSantis.
It's Bad Girls Club IRL in suits.
Flanking the governor, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy,
Vivek's got his hair pushed up more than
former
mine.
South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Next is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott and former New
He's got
Jersey
more
Governor
like
Chris Christie.
Oh my god.
On the
Good
wing tonight,
Chris.
former Vice President Mike Pence. And North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
Oh my God, Doug Burgum's on his Achilles.
We have questions on a wide variety of issues important to primary voters. Candidates get 1 minute to answer and 30 seconds to respond. It's singled out.
Hutchinson is
when
gone
their
from this
time
debate.
runs out, we'll all hear this.
So we'll miss his presence.
We have a lot of ground to cover, so
R.I.P.
please
Ace's
keep it
political,
civilized.
And presidential
Let's get going.
prospects.
We are in this spacious, sunny place tonight, designed to reflect the very nature and character of Ronald Reagan. It's a place that makes you proud to be an American. Yet today our nation is drowning in division and incivility.
Voters say they dread the 2024 election and find politics exhausting. 2 in 3 Americans think the country is on the wrong track, and 3 in 4 say the economy is not in good shape.
Prices are up 18% since 2020. More than half of the U.S. population has little access to childcare. 85% of Americans say their personal finances are a source of stress.
Americans want to believe a leader who says, "You can follow me. I've got you. Don't worry." President Biden is trying to do that with Bidenomics.
And yesterday, he joined the picket lines where auto workers are demanding more wages and job security. Senator Scott, you recently reacted by praising Ronald Reagan for firing air traffic controllers in the 1980s, saying, "You strike, you're fired." Would you fire thousands of striking auto workers today, Senator?
Obviously, the President of the United States cannot fire anybody in the private sector. However, we should look back at the first bill in Congress under Joe Biden. The first bill had $86 billion for the union pensions because they continue to overpromise yet underdeliver. One of the challenges that we have in the current negotiations is that they want 4-day French work weeks, but more money. They want more benefits, working fewer hours. That is simply not going to stand. I sat in a finance committee hearing when a widow came before the committee who was promised pensions from the unions, $4,000 a month. Unfortunately, it had been cut to $1,000 a month. We must make sure that we honor the commitments that we make, and one of the ways that we do that, do not overpromise and then underdeliver and leave the taxpayers on the hook. I'll say this, Joe Biden should not be on the picket line. He should be on the southern border working to close our southern border.
Beautiful pivot. Look at that. Oh my God.
Because it is unsafe,
Last
wide
week he's
open,
all, let's fire
and
every single UAW
leading to the
worker. Now
deaths of
he's tiptoeing for an answer, wrapping it to the
70,000
border.
Americans in the last 12 months because of fentanyl.
He had to show the donors that slime
Every
was still
county
there.
in America
Like, guys,
is now a border.
Guys, I got this, okay? The slime's still there. I can get shifty. You want to see something?
County, because fentanyl has devastated Americans in every single state. I will also say 6 million illegal crossings since Joe Biden has taken office, and he eliminated Title 42. The one thing he should do is finish the wall, reinstate Title 42, and get the job done.
Well, I can promise you that we are going to have a lot of questions on the border and immigration. But in the meantime, we do want to talk about the economy and jobs, and especially want to talk about this strike for just a moment more. Mr. Ramaswamy, you've said you really empathize with the strikers. You're standing next to Senator Scott. Do you agree with what he said, or do you think he's wrong?
I agree with some of what he said, for sure. I like the spirit of it. I'll say that I don't have a lot of patience for the union bosses. I think that's where he and I actually have a common view. I do have a lot of sympathy for the workers, however. People are going through real hardship in this country. I've been through hardship growing up. My father stared down layoffs at GE under Jack Welch's tenure at the GE plant in Evendale, Ohio. My mom had to work overtime in nursing homes in Southwest Ohio to make ends meet and pay off our home loan. So I understand that hardship is not a choice. But victimhood is a choice, and we choose to be victorious in the United States of America. You know what? If I was giving advice to those workers, I would say go picket in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. That's really where the protest needs to be. Disastrous economic policies that have driven up prices, that have driven up interest rates and mortgage rates. At the same time, wages remaining stagnant. What we need is to deliver economic growth in this country.
So I just want to stop this real quick. I think the main point of economic pain and hardship throughout Joe Biden's candidacy is actually the complete opposite. And things that were brought in through COVID, through like emergency actions, everything like that, were being stripped away over time. And that's really the biggest thing where people are feeling hardship, because they were used to a booming economy. Like up until 2019, COVID happens, then we get all this money into the system, and it's just stripped away. The child tax credit literally almost eliminated child poverty in full, and it's completely gone because of Republicans and because of policies like Vivek Ramaswamy's pushing forward right now for just tax cuts for the wealthy, and then it'll trickle down to every single other person, and they're all idiots, and it's okay. It's all right, guys. We got
Unlock
this.
American energy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. Put people back to
Nuclear, I
work
agree with.
by no longer paying them more money
Everything
to stay at
else,
home.
idiotic.
Stabilize the U.S. dollar itself and rescind a majority of those unconstitutional federal regulations that are hampering our...
We're a net exporter of oil. If we're able to just, not, and, negotiate some type of peace in Ukraine, Russian exports, everything like that, get the economy back to where it was, get oil production back to where it was, and everything like that, we're kind of good. Like, why does this keep changing every second?
An American vision that we embrace economic growth, and capitalism is still the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty, and we should not apologize for it. That's what it means to be an American.
Together, the CEOs of General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis make 336 times the number of rank-and-file workers. That's just part of a wider income inequality trend in the country. The richest 1% now controls 1/5 of all income. Vice President Pence, last week you said you side with American workers, but you also support how these companies operate. Which is it?
Well, thank you for the question. I want to thank Univision and Fox Business.
He's thanking them for the question because no one's cared about Mike Pence's opinion since January 6, 2021. Thank you.
For assembling such a wonderful forum. Look, I do disagree with something Tim Scott just said. Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line. I mean, look, I'm from the second leading manufacturing state in the country per capita. I was governor of the state of Indiana. We brought 12,000 factories back to America during our administration. I know something about manufacturing. And I got to tell you, while the union bosses are talking about class warfare and talking about disparity in wages, I have to tell you, I really believe what's driving that is Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. Auto workers and all American workers are feeling it, and families are
so they should get the money, right? I think that's what he's going to say.
Struggling in this economy.
Yeah, all concessions go to the UAW. Everything they're asking for should be granted.
And Joe Biden's Green New Deal agenda is good for Beijing and bad for Detroit. We ought to repeal the Green New Deal, get rid of the mandates and subsidies that are driving American gasoline automotive manufacturing into the graveyard. And beyond that also, as President of the United States, I'll be standing with workers all across America, and I'll be standing for the right to work of every American to join a union or not join a union as they decide.
Senator Scott, you were mentioned. Will you care to respond?
There's no doubt that Joe Biden needs to be fired. That's why I'm running for president. I look forward to being the next president of the United States. I will also say, I know America can do for anyone what she's done for me. It's why we're focusing on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting the America we all love. Growing up in a single-parent household, I wondered if the American dream would work for a kid in the inner city. I've got good news for every single child, whether you're in the inner cities of Chicago or the rural parts of Iowa. America and the dream, it is alive, it is well, and it is healthy. God bless these United States of America.
Governor Haley, you raise your hand.
I think we need to look at exactly what happened. Biden showed up on that picket line, but why are those workers actually there? It's because of all of the spending that he has pushed through in the economy that's raised the inflation. So when you look at the fact that we are paying higher gas prices, higher grocery prices, $7,000 more a year for families, what we need to do is I came out with an economic plan, eliminate the gas and diesel tax so that they have more money in their pocket. Let's focus on going after middle America and cutting taxes for middle America and collapsing those brackets. Let's get rid of unfair distortions like the state and local tax that they give to wealthy people in blue states and paid by red states. And let's make sure we make the small business taxes permanent. They only made those temporary. They made the corporate taxes permanent. Let's focus on what it takes to get more cash in the pockets of workers. That's when we'll be able to deal with strikes like this, not sitting on a picket line.
Can we please have tax breaks instead of pickets? Yeah, they want more money, but let's just cut their bosses' taxes. Come on, guys. It's simple.
Like Joe Biden is.
Thank you, Governor Haley. We have other questions to get to about economy. Allow me to.
I just have to. I'm sorry.
Allow me to.
I'm sorry. I have to jump in because we're missing the point, and every other network is missing the point. The reason why people are striking in Detroit is because Joe Biden's interference with capital markets and with free markets. The subsidies, we're subsidizing the automakers and we're subsidizing the cars and a particular kind of car, not every car. We're subsidizing electric vehicles. And when you decide that we're going to take all of your taxpayer monies, take $1 billion, subsidize a certain type of vehicle, and the batteries come from China. China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals. They're called rare earth because they're measured in parts per million. China is moving 100,000 pounds of earth in Indonesia, in Africa. They're literally destroying the planet so that they can make a battery that's in a car subsidized here. That's why they're striking, because they need 2/3 less workers to build an electric car. Joe Biden, this strike is at Joe Biden's feet.
We're going to keep the topic of economy, but allow me to follow question to Governor Christie. The government will shut down if Congress does not reach a deal by the end of this week. Vice President Pence warns that politics of, quote, Trump's populist proteges, like Mr. Ramaswamy, are a road to ruin for the GOP. If the government shuts down, should voters blame populist Republicans?
Voters should blame everybody who's in Washington, D.C. They get sent down there to do the job, and they've been failing at doing the job for a very long time. And let's be honest about this with the voters. You know, during the Trump administration, they added $7 trillion. $7 trillion in national debt. And now the Biden administration has put another $5 trillion on and counting. They have failed, and they're in the spot they're in now because none of them are willing to tell the truth. None of them are willing to take on the difficult issues. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road. And the inflation that Nikki spoke about is absolutely right, and it's caused by government spending. And that's why people all across this country are suffering tonight. And yet we don't get any answers because Joe Biden hides in his basement and won't answer as to why he's raising the debt the way he's done. And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room to answer.
Everyone just started sweating bullets when Christie brought everyone else into the anti-Trump conversation. Do you see Tim Scott just look over his shoulder like Trump was just going to grab him?
Answer those questions for the people you talk about who are suffering. And if the government closes, it's the blame. It is to the blame of everyone in Washington, D.C., who has failed to do their job and just plays to the grandstand.
The next question is for Governor DeSantis.
We can get three things done. We want to get things done. Here's how we get it done in Washington. We must find a way.
Can we please respect the time?
We can get it done.
Governor DeSantis, you haven't spoken. Please.
The people in Washington are shutting down the American dream with their reckless behavior. They borrowed, they printed, they spent, and now you're paying more for everything. They are the reason for that. They have shut down our national sovereignty by allowing our border to be wide open. So please spare me the crocodile tears for these people. They need to change what's going on. And where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight.
Whoa. Ron DeSantis is pulling out all the stops. He's going from 13.5 to maybe 13.7%.
Owes it to you to defend his record where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have now. I can tell you this as Governor.
DeSantis just saying, Trump, you should be here if you're going to be president. And then Trump's just going to come back, call him a cuck and everything. It's going to be so funny.
Florida, we cut taxes, we ran surpluses, we've paid down over 25% of our state debt, and I vetoed wasteful spending when it came to my desk. And as your president, when they send me a bloating spending bill that's going to cause your prices to go up, I'm going to take out this veto pen and I'm going to send it right back to them.
What's more powerful, the Doug Burgum pocket constitution or Ron DeSantis' legislative pen?
Question. I just want to address
I'm going to go to Senator Scott, but I have a question that is on the minds of a lot of moms and dads and Americans, and I know that you've been thinking about it because child care costs, they are up. They're topping $10,000 per month. Some families are spending up to half of their income on child care, and they're having to decide, is it worth it for me to work, or does it not make sense for me financially? In 3 days, the billions of dollars in pandemic-era funding is going to end, and 70,000 daycares could close. So you had an effort to broaden eligibility for child care assistance. That fell apart last year. And for the moms and dads out there who are worried, what can you tell them if you weren't able to get it through the Congress? How could you do it as president?
Certainly one of the things I did as a member of Congress was to make sure that we protected the Head Start programs around the country, giving people the opportunity to pick and choose the place that they send their children. The challenges that we see today under the Biden administration is that the cost for daycare has gone over $15,000.
Just got an email from Donald Trump talking about how the rhinos shamelessly attacked him last night.
Per child.
Perfect
In the
timing.
Build Back Broker plan, he called it the Build Back Better plan, it was going up to $29,000. The way we fix that problem is to make sure that we actually cut taxes and give more Americans their money back. When I helped write the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we actually lowered a single mother's taxes by 70% on the federal level.
We lowered a single mother's taxes by 70% on the federal level because it was actually Jeff Bezos' wife. She was a multi-billionaire. And also this Hillary jump scare keeps getting me, okay?
Dual income households by 60%. Then we went a step further. We doubled the child tax credit and made it refundable. By doing that, more parents had more resources to make the decisions how to take care of their family. The one thing we should do is
So you're pro-social spending for child tax credit, right? Bring it back. What's so hard about saying that? Where's that?
The American people keep their money. When that happens, the greatest opportunities rise from the ashes.
Okay, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Go ahead, and then we're going to the border.
Ilya mischaracterized a part of my view. I think this artificial division is unhelpful in our party. The real divide is not between the Republicans on this stage. And in the Reagan Library, I want to say these are good people on this stage. The real divide is between the majority of us in this country.
Vivek's scared of more Christie attacks. That's why he wants to make sure that he knows that he thinks he's a good guy.
Who love the United States of America and share our founding ideals. free speech, meritocracy, the idea you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character, and the fringe minority in the Democrat Party that has a chokehold over that party. That's the real divide. Right. So this populist versus classical debate is artificial. Ilya? We need to unite this party.
We are going to talk about immigration and the border. And child care. We have
I think we're going to go on. You have to.
We have millions of people.
Sorry, Doug. I'm so sorry, Doug.
All these questions, we're going to get to you. We're going to come back to you. There's a lot of time.
We're about child care. Nobody answered the question. In North Dakota, we knew that the cliff was coming. We knew that there was going to.
She said "sir" because she doesn't know Doug Bergen's name.
Be millions of people without it, and so guess what? We planned.
Okay.
And when we passed legislation because child care.
We will get you some questions, but you're going to have to let us move on. We are going to the border next.
Child care is workforce infrastructure.
And I haven't been given a chance to respond.
In 1984, President Ronald Reagan said the following:
The idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally.
2 years later, President Reagan granted amnesty to nearly 3 million immigrants, something no Democrat or Republican president has done.
So they're all going to advocate for it, right? In the Reagan Library, in the Reagan Mausoleum.
Since
say, yeah.
Governor Christie. As governor of a non-border state in 2010, you supported a path to citizenship. But when you ran for president in 2016, you flipped, saying immigrants should be tracked like FedEx packages. Where do you stand now on a path to citizenship for 11 million of undocumented immigrants?
Well, the problem is that since no one has done anything since we first had this discussion 13 years ago, we're not in a position to be able to do any of that anymore. What we have to do now is first treat this like the law enforcement problem it is. Our laws are being broken every day at the southern border, every day. And Joe Biden and his crew is doing nothing about enforcing that law. They are letting it go. And by the way, they announced during the presidential race they were going to let it go. And
let me look this up. I've never actually looked into this. Whoa. I just went to the gym. I'm like winded, okay? Biden ramps up deportations. About 85,000 have been repatriated since South 42 was lifted. 65% increase since last year. Hey, what are you doing? She's so funny. She thinks she's so tough with her fur ball in her mouth. Hey, you're okay. Come here. Come here. All right. Yeah, so deportations are up.
And we need to have a president who acts like I did as governor, enforce the law first and foremost. And that means what I'll do on day one is sign an executive order to send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol to make sure that we stop the flow of fentanyl over the border, but also to make sure that we send a much different message. We want you here in this country to fill the 6 million vacant jobs we have, but only if you come here to follow the law and only if you come here legally. If you come here illegally, we will apprehend you and we will send you back across the border from which you came. And the fact is that until we set a law and order agenda in this country, not only now but in the future, we won't be able to continue this. And I'll tell you this. Donald Trump failed on this as well. He said he was going to build a wall across the whole border. He built 52 miles of wall and said Mexico would pay for it. Guess what? I think if Mexico knew that he was only going to build 52 miles, they might have paid for the 52 miles.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, Governor Haley. Most illegal immigrants are coming from countries south of the border. You've seen the Fox News drone. It's captured this steady stream of people coming into the country on a daily basis. In fact, I believe we have a live picture of it tonight. That is happening right now, live. In the last decade, the U.S. has spent nearly $55 billion to address the root causes of migration. But crime, poverty, and corruption, they persist, and the number of migrants is only growing. Are we wasting our money?
Well, what happens is when Joe Biden waved the green flag, it told everybody to come. And now we've seen 6 million people cross the border. We've had more fentanyl that have killed Americans in the Iraq, Vietnam, or Afghanistan wars combined. We need to make sure that we are a country of laws. The second we stop being a country of laws, we give up everything this country was founded on. So we have to secure the border. The way we do that is, first of all, defund sanctuary cities. You see what's happening in Philadelphia right now. It's got to stop. We need to make sure we put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. I spent 400 miles down that border, and I'm telling you, Border Patrol agents aren't allowed to do their job. Let's go back to remain in Mexico policy. Instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport.
I like this notion that, like, Border Patrol agents are, like, zip tied and, like, put on their asses and can't do anything. When was that video of them just, like, rounding people up with, like, lassos and everything? Wasn't that, like, last year? That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was crazy.
High in the hills of California's Simi Valley stands a
border. You've seen the Fox News drone. It's
northern border, period.
You would cut
we
off
need
aid
to
to the
keep
region.
Americans safe, and right now Americans are not safe. Only when
No one's brought up war with Mexico. I'm kind of surprised.
we fix the immigration system, only when we get the border secure, should we ever look at putting any more money into this. Our money should be about keeping Americans
They're not
safe. We're
saying it
not doing that.
because they
Joe
know it's a
Biden's not doing that. And you mentioned Congress and shutting down government. I'll make it clear. We have to change the budget process in 4 years. In 40 years. Congress has only delivered a budget on time 4 times in 40 years. If they don't keep the government open, they should not get paid. No pay, no budget. That's the way we should.
Governor DeSantis, we have a question for you. Governor DeSantis, China invested $12 billion in Latin America just last year. They signed strategic partnerships with 7 countries, including Mexico. And China's military ties to the region now include arms sales and training exercises. Are you comfortable with China deepening ties with our southern neighbors?
Of course not. And the reason why we're in this mess is because elites in D.C. for far too long have chosen surrender over strength when it comes to the CCP. Some people in our country got rich, our industrial base got hollowed out, and they have been able to build the second most powerful military in the entire world. We need a totally new approach to China. We are going to have real hard power in the Indo-Pacific, like Reagan, to deter their ambitions. We're going to have economic independence from China, where we're decoupling our economy, and we are going to go after the cultural power they have in this country. As governor of Florida, I banned the CCP from buying land in our state. We should do that all across these United States. We shouldn't have them in our universities. We shouldn't have Confucius Institutes. So you see a country in decline, our power's in decline. China's going to surpass us this decade, and if they do that, that's going to affect every single American household. As your president, I am not going to let that happen. I'm going to reverse this country's decline. We are going to choose strength, not surrender when it comes to the CCP.
America is not a country in decline. Under Joe Biden, we are a country in retreat.
You propose, quote, universal deportation for all undocumented immigrants and their children, even if the children are citizens of the United States. Under what legal premise will you expel U.S. citizens?
Has to say about it.
So the first thing I want to say is I agree with everything the Republicans on the stage are on the right side of this issue. Militarize the southern border, stop funding sanctuary cities, and end foreign aid to Mexico and Central America to end the incentives to come across. But I do go a step further. You're right about that, Ilya. I favor ending birthright citizenship for the kids of illegal immigrants in this country. Now, the left will howl about the Constitution and the 14th Amendment. The difference between me and them is I've actually read the 14th Amendment. What it says is that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the laws and jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So nobody believes that the kid of a Mexican diplomat in this country enjoys birthright citizenship. Not a judge or legal scholar in this country will disagree with me on that. Well, if the kid of a Mexican diplomat doesn't enjoy birthright citizenship, then neither does the kid of an illegal migrant who broke the law to come here. And as the father of two sons, it is hard for me to look them in the eye and say, you have to follow the law when our own government fails to follow its own laws. That's how we really go the distance and solve this problem and restore the rule of law in the United States of America, because that is part of what it even means to be an American.
Senator Scott, you oppose ending birthright citizenship. What does Mr. Ramaswamy have wrong on that issue?
Yeah, there's no doubt the fact that when you think of the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, it was certainly written as it relates to slavery, not as it relates to illegal immigration. It's been applied to illegal immigration. So the challenge that we face is, in fact, one that has to do with whether or not the people that come here are under the jurisdiction of our laws. And frankly, if you come here illegally, you are not. Now, surviving a Supreme Court argument is something I can't tell you. But from a perspective of the Constitution, I think it's simple that clearly it was designed for slavery and not for illegal immigration. I'll go one step further, though. When we have a conversation about the things that are happening on this stage, we think about the fact that Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that, because last debate he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know, I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well. It's not nonsense.
Shit, dude, the timing on that and funding Hunter Biden, dude, that was excellent.
Look,
Wait, we have to go back.
These are, Alan, respond. These are good people.
How you can say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well. It's not nonsense.
So look, Alan, respond. These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's involved.
Some of us are tainted.
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
You said bought and paid for.
If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
One of the challenges we should have
please focus on the issues that matter. We know we did business in China. Everybody knows that.
If I may address,
focus on holding Joe Biden accountable. That's what we need to be.
I actually agree with Ron DeSantis.
Speak at the same time. No one can understand.
Exactly. So if I may, I agree with Ron DeSantis on China. When every other CEO expanded into the Chinese market, you know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there. And when I started my next company, Strive, right when it years ago, right when I started my next company, Strive, to compete against BlackRock, excuse me, to compete against BlackRock, I made a commitment that we would never do business in China. And I will say something.
I think you have more than time to explain your point.
Well, if I was interrupted by a lot of people here, and I want to be respectful because I believe these are good people, but I do not believe in these. We're sitting here in the Reagan Library.
Yes, I wish you
in
did
the
not
honor
think it was
of Ronald Reagan's library, if I may, from one admirer of Ronald Reagan to another, from one admirer of Reagan to another, we cannot sit and violate Reagan's 11th commandment.
I want to hear about that.
Let's have a policy debate.
What's going on?
Let us have a policy debate.
Let's have about their records.
Let's have a policy debate. And the right answer is we need to declare
independence
of China, and I will see that through.
Doug Burgum's got. Dude, Doug Burgum has gotten more coverage and airtime than Mike Pence. This is
2017, the Trump-Pence administration canceled DACA, which put the legal status of 600,000 Dreamers in the hands of the courts. Dreamers work and they pay taxes. As president, if the Supreme Court ends DACA, would you work with Congress to reach a permanent solution for Dreamers?
Well, first, let me say I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal in 2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections. So we're nice to have you participating in elections. So Let me speak to this issue. Number one,
You think she's like a 2-year-old?
I negotiated the Remain in Mexico policy with the Mexican government. We used economic power to bring the Mexican government to the table. We built hundreds of miles of border wall, and despite what's said here today, we reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%. And as President of the United States, I can do it again. And the truth is we need to fix a broken immigration system, and I'll do that as well. But first and foremost, a nation without borders is not a nation. And we have to secure the southern border of the United States of America. I know how to do it, and we will do it again. Let me say one other thing about China. Let me say one other thing about China.
Would you negotiate with Congress to
Let me say one other thing about China.
give a solution to the problem that Dreamers have right now? They are on a limbo.
Well, let me tell you, I served in Congress for 12 years, although it seemed longer. But, you know, something I've done different than everybody on this stage is I've actually secured reform in Congress. You know, Ron, you talk a really good game about cutting spending, but you've increased spending in Florida by 30%. When I was a member of Congress in 2006, right after Hurricane Katrina, Dana, you remember it, we stood our ground. I led House conservatives. We cut $100 billion out of the federal budget. It can be done, but as I said in the last debate, I'll say again, this is no time for on-the-job training. I'm going to be ready on day one to get Congress to step
Zero answer to any
up,
question.
secure the southern border of the
As I
United States, build a military fitted to our times, and we're going to get spending in Washington, D.C. under control once and for all.
On the other side of this break, and I propose to go to a break. How will these candidates make America safer as rising crime plagues our cities? Debate night continues.
Mention each other, that means the fewer questions you're going to get. Okay, so we want to talk about crime. This has been a horrendous problem in our country. The Fox News and others have been covering it.
The real show.
Governor Christie, crime in major cities is striking fear into the hearts of Americans. Just last night, looters took over the streets of Philadelphia. You said in the last debate that you would use U.S. attorneys to prosecute crimes local prosecutors won't. But they are stretched as well, and they could not handle all of the lawlessness, the shoplifting, all the carjackings, the armed robberies. They're all surging. Progressive prosecutors were elected by their constituents, and they can't be fired by a president. So what would you do to end the revolving door of criminality?
Well, look, Dana, I'm the only one on this stage who's done it. For 7 years, I ran the 5th largest office in this country. At the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey, and we set records for the number of prosecutions that we brought that still have not been broken. And the reason was that we went after the crime that was affecting people's lives. And as president, I will appoint an attorney general and instruct that attorney general that you are to put all the resources that are necessary to bring our cities back under control. The fact is, they will be stretched. There's no doubt about that, but that's what they take the job for, because they love the idea of enforcing the law. We've got to bring law and order back to this country, and not just in our cities. But we need law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching. Okay? And you're not here tonight. Not because of polls and not because of your indictments.
Right at me.
You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right. I want to ask Governor DeSantis, you fired a couple of prosecutors in your state, but as governor, as president, you would not have the ability to do that. How do you think about dealing with the root causes of crime, especially this revolving door of the criminals that just get out and come back and commit another crime?
Well, the crime in these cities is one of the strongest signs of the decaying of America. We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Just being in Southern California over the last couple of days, my wife and I have met 3 people who have been mugged on the street, and that would have never happened 10 or 20 years ago. In Florida, we back the blue. We support the men and women of law enforcement. They are keeping us safe. We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. And yes, when I had 2 progressive prosecutors that weren't following the law in Florida, I removed them from their posts, and the people of Florida are safer as a result of it. As president, I will use the Justice Department to bring civil rights cases against all of those left-wing Soros-funded prosecutors. We're not going to let them get away with it anymore. We want to reverse this country's decline. We need to choose law and order over rioting and disorder.
On a related subject, Governor Haley, there's a nationwide policing shortage. Retirements are up, recruitment is in the tank, and morale is at a record low. 3 years ago, you signed a pledge to support law enforcement. Now, pledges are a nice idea, but what's your actual plan to get more police on our streets?
Well, and I actually did it in South Carolina, too. You know, what we knew in South Carolina was you take care of those who take care of you. We have to start taking care of law enforcement, but it's not just taking care of them with words. It's making sure that you also follow through on what they do. Right now, we have a lot of stolen guns on the street. Well, these law enforcement officers, they arrest these people, and then they go and they're let out the very next day. So law enforcement feels like no one has their back. We have to start prosecuting according to the law. We have to make sure we have the backs of law enforcement, and we have to make sure that we're a country of law and order. But I want to go back to China because I don't think we spent enough time on that. Right now, we have to look at what government's doing to hurt us against China, too. You have a company, U.S. Antibiotics, that produces amoxicillin, the #1 antibiotic that we need. And right now, there is a company in Bristol, Tennessee, that produces that, yet our federal government only gets it from China. We need to be focusing on companies that produce in America and supporting those companies that produce in America, not companies that are helping China.
Governor, we will be talking foreign.
Nikki Haley, what would you do to increase police presence in the U.S. all around? I would bring amoxicillin production back to the U.S., which I don't disagree with. Yeah, obviously, buy it from buy local, buy union, obviously, but like the way that no one has answered a single question this entire time is astonishing. I love it.
Foreign policy later. Delia?
Yes, thank you, Stuart. We're going to stay in the topic of crime because it affects all of us. Governor Burgum, for the first time ever, a Univision poll found that mass shootings and gun safety are one of the most important issues for Latino voters. Mental health concerns are not unique to the United States, but gun violence is. What is your specific plan to curb gun violence?
Well, first we need to understand is I think that the liberal left seems to be just completely bent on prosecuting law-abiding citizens that are gun owners, because every solution they have to this is take away the Second Amendment rights of Americans, and somehow that's going to solve the problem. But all these cities that we're talking about that you showed the videos of tonight, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. So we know that that's not what's working. What we have to do is get back to the core issues about the
Okay. Good girl.
Family. We have to get back to behavioral health and mental health. We've got to get back to actually enforcing the laws these people talked about. And like we've done in North Dakota, where we've got the goal and we're on the track to being the most military-friendly state in the nation. We've got the most military and the most support of what we're doing in terms of law enforcement, because the morale is down because we've been defunding the police, because they've been attacked in the press. The police have become the bad guys when they're the one. There's all these jobs available in America. Why would you be a policeman if people don't even respect them? Every time I see a policeman, the first thing I say is thank you. And so does everybody else in my family. And
why do they have such a bad name? Oh my God. The police? I couldn't think. It's not like reform is like something that a lot of people are pushing for. I don't know. My thoughts aren't fully developed because it's a very tough situation. Obviously, I stand with BLM. But at the same time, we do need some type of policing presence, but reform is the obvious way to go moving forward. And they just can't even seem to comprehend, why would someone even like criticize them? Like, they must be an anarchist. Like, what?
Most of the people in our state, because they know we have to respect the people that are out there defending us every single day.
Can I answer the question on mass shootings?
Mr. Ramaswamy, according to Customs and Border Protection, about 90% of fentanyl is seized at official border crossings, and 57% of the smugglers are U.S. citizens. How would you stop fentanyl brought into the country, mostly by U.S. citizens, through ports of entry?
There's two sides to this, and we have to be very honest about it. One is we do have to seal that southern border. Building the wall is not enough. They're building cartel-financed tunnels underneath that wall. Semi-trucks can drive through them. We have to use our own military to seal the Swiss cheese of a southern border. But we also have to be honest. There's a demand-side problem in this country, too, a mental health epidemic. I met family in Iowa.
There's a demand-side problem. So let's legalize, tax, and regulate, right? That's what he's going to say right now, right?
Two parents, Kathy and Derek, they lost their son Sebastian, 17 years old. He bought Percocet on Snapchat, and then he died. Why did he die? Because it was laced with fentanyl. That is closer to bioterrorism, not a drug overdose. That is poisoning. So it is our job to make sure that never happens. But it's also our job to make sure that 17-year-olds don't turn to Percocet via Snapchat. We have to bring back mental health care in this country, not with pump-in pharmaceuticals, but with faith-based approaches that restore purpose and meaning in the next generation of Americans. Many of them are getting it through social media. And this isn't a Republican point or a Democrat point, but if you're 16 years old or under, you should not be using an addictive social media product, period. This is something that we can both agree on, and we can revive both the mental health of this country while stopping the fentanyl epidemic that will kill more people this year than who died on 9/11, and I refuse to be a passive bystander sitting in the White House like the hollowed out husk of a current president we have. We will step up and address this problem to stand for Americans and our children.
Why are you encouraging TikTok? Quit encouraging TikTok.
That is why, everything he said I agree with. That is why, as Commander-in-Chief, I'm going to use the U.S. military to go after the Mexican drug cartels. They are killing our people. And the stories that I've seen in Florida, we had an infant, 18 months. Parents rented an Airbnb. And apparently the people that had rented it before were using drugs. The infant was crawling, the toddler was crawling on the carpet and ingested fentanyl residue and died. Are we just going to sit here and let this happen, this carnage happen in our country? I am not going to do that. So I guarantee you on day one, this border is going to be a day one issue for me as president. We're going to declare it a national emergency. Yes, we'll build the wall. We'll do remain in Mexico. But those Mexican drug cartels are going to be treated like the foreign terrorist organizations that they are.
President Pence. All right, Vice President Pence. We're going to move on to a different issue. Hold on, sir. Vice President Pence.
$5 billion.
Just last month, Vice President Pence, you said if elected, you would repeal all Obamacare mandates. However, you also made that same promise in 2016. And at that time, Trump-Pence had congressional majorities for at least the first 2 years. And you did not deliver on that promise. So Obamacare, right now, it is more popular than ever. Why should Americans trust you, if you become president, to fix that? Or is Obamacare here to stay?
Well, first, let me speak to the mass shootings issue, and then I'll answer that question. It's an important one, Dana.
$5 billion.
Look, I'm someone that believes that justice delayed is justice denied. And as a father of three, as a grandfather of three beautiful little girls, I am sick and tired of these mass shootings happening in the United States of America. And if I'm president of the United States, I'm going to go to the Congress of the United States, and we're going to pass a federal expedited death penalty for anyone involved in a mass shooting so that they will meet their fate in months, not years. It is unconscionable that
that's how we'll stop mass shootings.
The Parkland shooter, Ron, is actually going to spend the rest of his life behind bars in Florida. That's not justice. We have to mete out justice and send a message to these would-be killers that you are not going to live out your days behind bars. You're going to meet justice in this system.
But does that mean Obamacare is here to stay?
Well, thank you for reiterating the question, because I'd love to answer it. Look, I think it's one of the choices here. You know, my former running mate, Donald Trump, actually has a plan to start to consolidate more power in Washington, D.C., consolidate more power in the executive branch. If I'm president of the United States, it's my intention to make the federal government smaller by returning to the states those resources and programs that are rightfully theirs under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. That means all Obamacare funding, all housing funding, all HHS funding, all of it goes back to the states. We'll shut down the Federal Department of Education. Will allow states to innovate. We're going to revive federalism in America, and states are going to help bring America back.
But Stu, go ahead.
May I remind everyone to keep within their time frame so that we can get as many questions in as possible. This question for Governor DeSantis. Over 26 million Americans don't have insurance coverage. Governor DeSantis, 2.5 million of them are in your state. That's worse than the national average. Can Americans trust you on this?
Well, I think this is a symptom of our overall economic decline. Everything has gotten more expensive. You see insurance rates are going through the roof. People that are going to get groceries. I spoke with a woman in Iowa, and she said, you know, for the first time in my life, I'm having to take things out of my grocery cart when I get to the checkout line because the total goes up so quickly.
I have to eat bugs.
So this is very real, and people are hurting out there. So we've got to address the underlying problem with Bidenomics, the overspending, taking all Biden's rules and regulations. I'm going to throw them in the trash can on day one. You're not going to have to worry about that. We're going to open up all of our energy. We will be energy dominant in this country. That will lower your gas prices. And what we need to do with healthcare is recognize our healthcare is putting patients at the back of the bus. We have big pharma, big insurance, and big government, and we need to tackle that and have more power for the people and the doctor-patient relationship.
Governor, why is your record in Florida on insurance worse than the national average?
Our state's a dynamic state. We've got a lot of folks that come. Of course, we've had a population boom. We also don't have a lot of welfare benefits in Florida. You know, we're basically saying this is a field of dreams. You can do well in the state, but we're not going to be like California and have massive numbers of people on government programs without.
He's saying that to get ready for his, what is it, November 30th debate with Gavin Newsom?
Work requirements. We believe you work and you got to do that. And so that goes for all the welfare benefits. And you know what that's done, Stuart? Our unemployment rate is the lowest amongst any big state. We have the highest GDP growth amongst any big state. And even CNBC, no fan of mine, ranked Florida the #1 economy in America.
We're moving on.
Healthcare, Governor Haley. Healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy for American families, accounting for 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies. As president, how you protect Americans who get sick from financial ruin?
First of all, how can we be the best country in the world and have the most expensive health care in the world?
Universal,
we have an
right?
issue. My mom was in the hospital, and when she was in the hospital, they tried to bring her a couple of Tylenol, and she said, I don't need it. And they said, honey, go ahead and take it because you're paying for it anyway. Why is it that when we got the bill, the insurance company and the hospital negotiated the bill for her without her having anything to do with it? When I am president, we will break all of it, from the insurance company to the hospitals to the doctor's offices to the PBMs to the pharmaceutical companies. We will make it all transparent, because when you do that, you will realize that's what the problem is. Second thing is you've got to deal with tort law. The doctors don't give you the 10 tests because they want to. It's because of the 90% chance they'll get sued. And then we need to bring competition back to healthcare, get rid of certificate of need systems, and make sure that they can compete. We have to put the patient in the driver's seat. They've been in the back seat for way too long. And once we give the patient the ability to decide their health care, deciding which plan they want, that is when we will see magic happen. But we're going to have to make every part of the industry open up and show us where their warts are, because they all have them, and we need to fix this on behalf of the American people.
And that's what we did. Do you have a better way in 30 seconds?
Well, yes, we're not talking about the real problem ever. We talk about why do we have the most expensive health care in the world? It's because the federal government got involved the same way they did with EVs, and they said, we're going to subsidize a particular kind of software back in 2008 under Obama, and they said, hey, we're going to do this. It's going to make everyone more productive. All of you that are watching have been to a doctor's office when the doctor's got his back to you and their hands on a keyboard. The only industry in the world that's ever absorbed $1 trillion of IT and became less productive, they saw less patients per day, is U.S. healthcare because they were subsidizing a certain kind of technology. It wasn't about improving healthcare. It was about picking winners and losers. Every time the federal government's involved, whether it's higher education, healthcare, or now the auto industry, things get more expensive and less competitive.
That was a great transition because we are going to move on the future of education in America. What's the government's role in finding a way forward? The second Republican debate rolls on from Simi Valley.
An informed patriotism is what we want. And are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents in the long history of the world?
That was a Reagan jump scare I wasn't prepared for.
We are back live at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in the Air Force One Pavilion for the second Republican debate. And let's get back to our questions, Governor Haley. American students, they are in academic trouble. They have lower scores in math and reading. There's chronic absenteeism. That's at record highs. And this has even been called education homicide. You say school choice is the answer, but South Carolina, your home state, still has not enacted universal school choice, and even the current expansion won't be fully implemented until 2027. Parents can't wait 4 years for a fix. So what would you do right now?
Well, and school choice isn't the only answer, right? But I'll tell you, it's not out of a lack of trying that we didn't try and get school choice in South Carolina. What I'll tell you, first of all, is we have to acknowledge the fact that 67% of our 8th graders are not proficient in reading or math. Over 80% of our 8th graders aren't proficient in history or civics. And recently they came out and said our 12 and 13-year-olds are scoring at the lowest levels they've been scoring in reading and math in decades. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to make sure we catch our kids back up. We have to make sure they can read. A child that can't...
It's almost like there's a lack of teachers. There's a lack of funding, and so a lot of times you get a classroom of 40 kids to a single substitute teacher, and then they just have to figure out something, which is usually let's play on the iPads because there's nothing else to do. Because I'm not a formal registered teacher, I have no practical experience, and no one has taught me how to do this, but at the same time, I really need to get these kids to quiet down because there's no other teacher around.
Can't read by 3rd grade. It's
But let's not fund the public education system, not make teachers buy their own stuff or build their own libraries, and let's not actively hinder them by banning a lot of books in the libraries that they already built and paid for with their own money. But yeah, let's cut taxes. Let's send you to jail if you skip school, and let's harshen the penalties on everyone.
4 times less likely to graduate high school. We need to do reading remediation. We need complete transparency in the classroom. No parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need to make sure that we have school choice so that there's competition. We need to move all the programs from the federal government down to the states and let states decide what education looks like in their states. And we need to start building things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back in our high schools, and let's get our kids building the things that we know that we can make. When we start to focus on that and really bring in that parental involvement, that's when we'll start to see a difference. But we've got to get parents back included. We've got to quit spending time on this DEI and CRT and instead focus on financial literacy, on digital literacy, and on making sure that our kids know what they need to do to have the jobs of the next generation.
On the subject of education, a question for Governor Christie. Students in your state are getting high marks on their report cards, but minorities are not doing well with math and reading. Black and Hispanic students averaging 29 points lower than white students in New Jersey. Would you address minorities first?
You have to address all students. And look, in our state, Stuart, frankly, before I was governor, that gap was close to 50%. And what we did was institute more charter schools and more Renaissance schools and more public school choice in New Jersey with innovative solutions in cities like Camden, where now we took what was the worst school district in America during my time, and we have now increased that by nearly 40% in terms of their proficiency. It can be done when you give people choice. But let's tell the truth to everybody about what this is. This public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers' unions in this country. Randy Weingarten and her crew are absolutely strangling. They are taking the worst of their members and defending them rather than advocating for our kids. And when you have the President of the United States sleeping with a member of the teachers union, there is no chance that you could take the stranglehold away from the teachers union every day. They have an advocate inside the White House every day for the worst of their teachers, not for our students to be the best they can be. A President of the United States has to take on the teachers union. I did it in New Jersey, and I will do it as President of the United States.
Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you. Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you.
Are you guys having trouble seeing me?
Florida's new Black History curriculum says, quote, slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. You have said slaves develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of it. But many are still hurt. For descendants of slaves, this is personal. What is your message to them?
So first of all, that's a hoax that was perpetrated by Kamala Harris. We are not going to be doing that. Second of all, that was written by descendants of slaves. These are great Black history scholars, so we need to stop playing these games. Here's the deal. Our country's education system is in decline because it's focused on indoctrination, denying parents' rights. Florida represents the revival of American education. We're ranked #1 in the nation in education by U.S. News and World Report. My wife and I, we have a 6, 5, and 3-year-old. This is personal to us. We didn't just talk about universal school choice, we enacted universal school choice. We didn't just talk about Parents' Bill of Rights, we enacted the Parents' Bill of Rights. We eliminated critical race theory, and we now have American civics and the Constitution in our schools in a really big way, just like President Reagan asked for in his farewell address back in 1989. Florida is showing how it's done. We're standing with parents, and our kids are benefiting.
Senator Scott, you oppose to these new standards?
Sorry, the Florida stuff just makes me want to cry. That's rough. All right, let's get back to it.
What is your message for Governor DeSantis?
There is not a redeeming quality in slavery. He and Kamala should have just taken the one sentence out. America has suffered because of slavery, but we've overcome that. We are the greatest nation on earth because we faced our demons in the mirror and made a decision. So often we think that all the issues, you talked about crime and education and healthcare, we always think that those issues go back to slavery. Here's the challenge though. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money, where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail, and you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore capitalism, and put Americans back at work together as one American family. Our nation continues to go in the right direction. It's why I can say I have been discriminated against, but America is not a racist country. Never, ever doubt who we are. We are the greatest country on.
Dude, like, I think they all know that their time is up and that this is the last one. So they're kind of like floundering because they don't know how to cope with it. But, like, it's not even enjoyable. Like, I legit cannot, like, get through this. It's not even that, like, it's absurd or, like, stupid or anything. Like, it's just so boring. Like, they all covered all of this and used every single platitude used tonight in the first debate. Like, it is actually insane how nothing new has been said.
On God's green earth, and frankly, the city on the hill needs a brand new leader, and I'm asking for your vote.
I'm going to have a question for you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Over 10.7 million students in over 18,000 public schools nationwide have the ability to change their identity without parental notification. Governor Christie told Stewart last week that he would pass a federal law to protect parental rights. Would you try to do the same?
I have to be very clear about this. Transgenderism, especially in kids, is a mental health disorder. We have to acknowledge the truth of that for what it is. I met two young women early in this campaign.
Specifically on parental rights in schools.
Parents have the right to know. And you know what the hypocrisy of this is? Even New Hampshire failed to actually get past a piece of legislation here. The very people who say that this increases the risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know about that increased risk of suicide. And I'm sorry, it is not compassionate to affirm a kid's confusion. That is not compassion, that is cruelty. I met two young women, Chloe and Katie, early in this campaign, who are in their 20s, now regret getting double mastectomies and a hysterectomy. One of them will never have children. And the fact that we allowed that to happen in this country is barbaric. So I will ban genital mutilation or chemical castration under the age of 18, and parents have absolutely the right.
Would you try to pass a federal law that says parents should have that right?
We are going to require states absolutely have to follow that through.
Governor Burgum just to follow up on this because you in your state you do not have a law that says parents can't be notified, but you want to be president. Would you try to pass a federal law to say parents have that right?
I think this is a state's issue, but I do want to say something, because all night long we've been talking about issues about how it's broken in Washington, and I respect all of the people on the stage here for their 100+ years of public service. Thank you. But the reason why we're not talking about education or health care or safety being a problem in North Dakota is because we have a business leader. I've got more experience as a business leader than I think this whole group combined. I know I've created more jobs than everybody else on stage, thousands of high-paying jobs that have real meaning. So as a business leader, you come in and you treat the taxpayer like a customer. So in North Dakota, instead of fighting with the teachers' unions, we actually created a K-12 coordinating council. Everybody gets in the room and the customer is the student.
But you do understand that this is an issue that many people in America really are concerned about, worried about parents and notification in schools.
Yes, and that's why we have 50 platforms of innovation. That's why we have states. There are certain things the federal government is supposed to do. It's not the Department of Education. That needs to be assembled. We got to move it back to states. Do what we did in North Dakota. Instead of like, oh, here's a choice school and here's an old school, the old way with the teachers union, the kids are trapped. We made every school in North Dakota an innovation school. Every school got out from under the red tape, and the things that help teach the values that we're trying to get, like 4-H, like FFA, like Boy Scouts, they can get credit for all of that stuff in North Dakota. And by the way, North Dakota is now at the top of the median SAT scores in the country right now.
Vice President Pence, the Department of Homeland Security warns that violence against LGBTQ+ people is on the rise and intensifying. According to a recent study, members of that community are 9 times more likely to be victims of violent hate crimes. As president, how...
What if Mike Pence is just like, what? I didn't know that. And he starts like to cry. Starts tearing up.
Would you protect this community from violent attacks and discrimination?
Well, as President of the United States, I'll stand up for the safety and the civil liberties of every American, from every background. And I want the American people to know that. But I want to answer the question as well, Dana, that you just asked Doug Burgum. Because by way of full disclosure, Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years. And so full disclosure, look, education is a state and local function. The state of Indiana had one of the very first school choice programs in the country. And when I was governor of the state of Indiana, we doubled it. And as to your question, Dana, let's be very, very clear. When the Linn-Mar Community Schools in Iowa had a policy where you had to have a permission slip from your parents to get a Tylenol, but you could get a gender transition plan without notifying your parents, I weighed in. with a foundation. That's not bad policy. That's crazy. We're going to stand up for the rights of parents, and we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect our kids from this radical gender ideology agenda, and we've got to empower parents at the state level with the ability to choose where their kids go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. You empower parents, and our schools will straighten up and reflect our values and focus on the basics faster than you could possibly imagine.
Can I just say one thing?
China is investing. If you talk over everybody, we lose time. China is investing heavily in their tech companies. $280 billion every year on semiconductor research and development. That is 1 CHIPS Act per year. Governor DeSantis, you say companies like Google and Meta have too much power. Doesn't going after them give China an edge?
No, I think you look at how our society's developed. They have huge amount of power over our society. They've cracked down on free speech. We're not saying you don't want them to do business, but you want...
All right, chat. I gotta go to work.
Want it to be a free market, and right now they're...
I wish I could do this all day, but alas, I cannot. Let me go get Goo. Hey, babe. Hey, come here. Say hey. Sam Barber, what's poppin'? Drop a follow and I will stream your album. Million Eyes EP. I got you. Alright, bet. Well, everyone, have a great day, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.